Assalamualaikum to Dr. Rosliza and my fellow friends. These are my members. Me, Nur Fatiha, and Muhammad Amir as a leader going to present on corporate governance and audit of Brahim's Holdings Berhad. Firstly, we are going to look at corporate governance. On the first question is about on concept of good governance, including care, which is comprehend, apply, and report. Good governance is when the company staff from all departments and levels in achieving the company's vision, processes, and structures that assure long-term sustainability. This is important to make sure high effectiveness in internal controls, corporate culture, grounded on ethical behavior and transparency, also can reduce risk and avoid corruption and mismanagement in the company. MCCG apply that care, which is comprehend, apply, and report, and that encourage companies to clearly identify the thought processes involved in practicing good corporate governance. There are three principles that MCCG focused on. Firstly, the board and leadership effectiveness. The board of directors are responsible to supervise governance in the organization. A director has three main duties, which are duty of care, duty of obedience, and duty of loyalty. In duty of care, the board of directors need to make sure the directors act in good faith and with an honest belief to serve the best interest in the company. In duty of obedience, it is to make sure the business applicable to the law and the regulations. In duty of loyalty is when the directors make decisions without any personal conflict. Secondly is effectiveness audit and risk management. The audit committee plays a critical role in interrogations on the company's financial reporting process, internal control, risk management, and governance by reviewing a conflict interest situation and related party transactions. And thirdly is integrity in corporate reporting and meaningful relationship with stakeholders. This is important to provide stakeholders a better appreciation of the company's objective and the quality of its management. Okay, next is a differentiation between Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance and US, which is they are using Sarbanes-Oxley Act in section 404. So the differences in control assertions. In Malaysia, board of listed company must disclose in their annual reports the state in internal control in the form of a statement on internal control. In US, management must assess and the CEO and CFO must report to the market on the effectiveness of the internal controls over financial reporting. Next is documentation of controls. In Malaysia, encouraged but not a mandatory. In US, it is a mandatory documentation of all significant controls is required. Next is external auditor attestation. In Malaysia, the external auditor is required to review the SIC and report the result thereof to the board of the public listed company. In US, the external auditor must attest to management's control assessment. Next is the differences in risk of non-compliance. In Malaysia, material inconsistency arising from the external auditor review that the SIC could lead to a qualified or adverse audit opinion on the financial statement if a required amendment is not met in the financial statements, and appropriate action against the public listed company directors or officers. In US, it is qualified audit opinion on internal controls, legal action against the CEO and CFO, adverse impact on share price, corporate reputation, and stakeholders relationship. In question 2 is about compare the board composition effectiveness between MCCG 2021 and Brahim's Holdings Berhad. Since we are using Corporate Governance Report 2020, so some of it doesn't have in Brahim's Holdings Berhad. So in practices 5.2 in MCCG 2021, there are 6 directors consist of 3 independent non-executive directors, 2 non-independent non-executive directors, and 1 executive chairman. In practices 5.3 and 5.4, there are no independent directors serving beyond 9 years. In practices 5.5, the Board Nomination Committee and Remuneration Committee take into account the current diversity in skills, experience, age, cultural background, and gender. In 5.8, the Nomination Committee comprises 2 independent non-executive directors and is chaired by Kamil bin Datuk Haji Abdul Rahman, who is independent non-executive directors. In practices 5.9, the female company director is currently only 1 out of 6, which only 17% of 30% as required by the MCCG 2021. In question 3 is about evaluating sustainability in organizations. Firstly is vision and mission. In economic perspective is to seek opportunities in non-aviation segment because the business are focused on food service and food related sector. So Brahim's can partnering on or collaboration with hospital, for example. In social perspective, the mission and vision used to ensuring minimum health and safety risk to employee. For environment perspective, Brahim's manage their greenhouse to prevent contamination. Next, in reflecting Board of Directors strategic leadership in economy, we can share that Brahim's has expertise in every different segments of business. So they don't really need to hire that could affect higher in cost since the company need a proper government and risk management. In social perspective, Brahim's also support non-profit and charity organizations. For example, the company organize zakat program for their staff. In environment perspective, with an expertise, the company able to promote long-term sustainability success of the company. Thirdly, in reflecting operational implementation level, in economic perspective, Brahim's try to not depend on its flight catering services, which means they need to started new strategy to diversify their business, such as on their warehouse. In social perspective, the company provide support in aspect of program planning, development and implementation. In environment, the company are comply with the Environment Protection Act and Corporate Governance MCCG.
Okay, we go into the audit report question. Okay, first question is identify types of audit report issue to the case organization for the last 3 years. In 2018, type of audit report is unqualified opinion. The financial statement of Brahim's Holding Berhad and its subsidiary give a true and fair view of the financial position. Basis for unqualified opinion, the audit has been conducted in accordance with approved standards on auditing in Malaysia and international standards on auditing. In 2019, type of audit report is qualified opinion. The accompanying financial statements give a true and fair view of the financial position. Basis for qualified opinion, the external auditor were unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence in relation to key assumptions used in determining the recoverable amount of the goodwill. In 2020, type of audit report is disclaimer of opinion. The external auditor has not been able to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence to provide a basis for an audit opinion on these financial statements. Basis of disclaimer of opinion: in the event that these are not forthcoming, the group and the company may be unable to realize their assets and discharge their liability in the normal course of business. Okay, next question is elaborate the findings in audit report and the highlight issue in the key audit methods section for last 3 years. In 2018, firstly is impairment assessment of goodwill. The auditor focused on the impairment of goodwill allocated to catering and related services due to the significant judgment involved in determining the key assumptions used in performing the impairment test, such as revenue growth. Second is impairment assessment of cost of investment in subsidiary. In 2019, firstly is deferred tax assets. As at 31 December 2019, the group has recognized deferred tax assets for unused tax loss, unabsorbed capital allowance, and deductible temporary difference that it believes are recoverable. Second is trade receivable. The auditor focused on this area because the group made significant judgment over assumptions about risk of default and expect loss rate. In 2020, going concern issue, firstly is Brahim Holding Berhad has leapt into practice Note 17, PN 17, status on 28 February 2019. Second is the global economy, in particular the aviation industry, face uncertainty as a result of unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, last question is evaluate whether the type of audit report issue, the matters highlighted in the key audit matters section in prior years are related to the financial difficulty that the case organization are having now. In 2018, the company's external auditors PricewaterhouseCoopers PLT PwC state an unqualified opinion for the Brahim'S Holding Berhad financial reporting in this accounting period. This report indicates that the auditors are pleased with the financial reporting of the organization. According to the auditor, the company operations are in good compliance with governance principle and applicable legislation. Although the auditors indicate that the company auditor opinion is unqualified, there are still some issues in the key audit matters. Next, in 2019, Brahim Holding Berhad has changed their external auditors in 2019 from PricewaterhouseCoopers PLT PwC to Baker Tilly Montero Hang PLT. The auditor issues this type of opinion because they are unsure about a particular procedure and transaction in the company operation. Disqualified opinions are not acceptable to the company investors because they project an unfavorable view of a company financial situation. The external auditor, which is Baker Tilly Montero Hang PLT, also state trade receivable as a key audit matter as Brahim's group has significant trade receivable as at 31 December 2019, which includes certain amounts which are long outstanding. The auditor focused on this area because the group made significant judgment over assumption about risk of default and unexpected loss rate. In 2020, auditors issued this type of opinion because they believe the company has hampered their capacity to perform a complete audit, or if they have not received adequate answers to their concerns. They also have not been able to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence to provide a basis for an audit opinion on these financial statements. Since the beginning of the financial year, the global economy, in particular the aviation industry, faced uncertainty as a result of the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic. The travel and border restriction implemented by countries around the world has led to a significant fall in demand for air travel, which impacted the group's and the company's financial performance and cash flow. Okay, that's all from we. Thank you.